Hello and welcome to Optional Rule. My name is Scott. I'm going to be preparing for my Dungeons and Dragons Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign in this session, talking a little bit about campaign design, about session design, how to use the Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master preparation technique. I'm going to talk a little bit today about the French technique for running your campaigns and plotting out plot lines. And I'm going to talk quite a bit about the way I've been mixing Rime of the Frostmaiden. By now, we've gotten to the point that I'm really doing a lot of my own plots, or at least my own mix heavily of the plots involved. And I'll talk a little bit about how I'm managing that, why I've been making those decisions. Now, the hope of this is that you will discover something useful in your campaign, that you will hear the nitty gritty of how I go about creating my game, which I run weekly on a virtual tabletop called Foundry, but you can use any system you want. I prefer to run in person, just like everybody else, but we're in the midst of a pandemic. If you're viewing this years in the future, I greet you from the past, if that's the case. And we are having to social distance, so I'm running online with people in town. So actually, I'm going to start off with a great tip for anybody looking to get into D&D now or maintain their momentum of running campaigns. Virtual tabletops and online play is an absolute necessity in today's world, and I encourage you to get involved. There's options like Roll20, there's Foundry, which you might see today that I'm using. There's Astral, there is Owlbear Rodeo. That's it, Owlbear Rodeo. There's a lot of Discord bots that you can use. There's lots of ways, more ways than we've ever had before to play games online. And I encourage you to sort of continue your momentum or seek players out and GMs out who might be willing to play online with you. I have to stop my timer here. So I encourage you to get out there and do what you can to discover the games and run the games that you need to keep the hobby going. Now, one piece of advice that I would actually offer for you to consider is, what does the future look like for you in terms of gaming? I've chosen to look within the city that I live. I live in a mid-sized city, so I'm actually playing virtually with people that I either quasi know or will get to know in real life in my community, with the hope that we can convert that to a face-to-face game when and if we emerge from this need to socially distance and just generally keep my momentum going. So something to consider on your end is, if you're looking to get into a group or maintain a group, look to that local community to see if you can discover players that are of similar mindset, that if you can keep something going or convert something to a face-to-face game, if that's what your goal is, once we're able to do that again. So that's my first really piece of advice to do when you're going forward. Welcome to everybody in the stream. If you're in the chat, go ahead and drop a hello. I would love to hear from you. And if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask them. I'd love to discuss any topic of Dungeons and Dragons or any questions you might have about the session prep that I'm doing, or pretty much anything you have on your mind when it comes to gaming and D&D. You can follow me on all the social medias under Optional Rule. Twitter is where I'm most active. I have an Instagram as well. Those, I think, are linked down in the little area there. Well, actually, now that I'm looking at my screen, I guess I don't have the links to it, but I'm on YouTube and on Twitch. I stream every Saturday at noon. That's what you should be watching right now. It's my daily session, my weekly session prep. I run the game on Tuesdays. That's what we're going to be preparing today. But I'm going to take a little bit of a step back today, talk about crafting and detailing a campaign, some of my reasons for why I'm mixing Rime of the Frostmaiden a little bit differently, some of the techniques I'm using to manage the scope of the campaign itself, and then we'll get into sort of my lazy DM prep technique that I typically use. So to cover the components of what I'm using, in case you're struggling to look for tools or tooling, you're looking at right now some of my notes from last session. I use a note-taking application called Notion.so. It's very effective for me. It sort of replaced OneNote for me. The version difference between OneNote, I actually don't get into wars between operating systems or applications. I just want something easy to use that's free for my campaign. So I opted out of OneNote because the versions were too different in terms of the capability. I couldn't track that, and I had some problems if I copy and pasted text into Discord, it would do as an image. So I just needed to get out. Notion SO provides those features for me. You can see sort of this hierarchical structure of I have my whole Dungeons and Dragons and my homebrew rules that I might use and tools links, and I have my actual campaign and I have one shots that I've created. So I'm able to aggregate all of these resources in a single place, and that really, really helps me maintain my sort of sanity as a DM. Again, I will I get on Twitter again. I do intend to make YouTube videos with it, gaming advice, running advice. One of the techniques that I try to use at Notion SO about is that you have to be, there's something in business called the 80-20 rule, where 80% of your results are going to be accomplished with 20% of your effort. So that's what they call low-hanging fruit, or whatever business term you want to use. That 80% of your results you're going to get with minimal effort, a very small amount of effort. And that 20% of your results take 80% of your effort. So that last mile stuff, that sort of optimization, all of that last leg of that 20% of content is going to take the majority of your effort. So what I tried, but one of the mistakes people make in running games is they don't develop workflows, because that assumes that you have some workflows to get that 80% of your work done with 20% of your effort. So you need to find note-taking applications. You need to go to sort of frameworks and rules and all these ways to bring down the level of effort it takes to do just base content, getting an encounter out there, or get a stat block generated, or anything like that. So that's what these frameworks and these rules do for me. It allows me to create a manageable set of tools that really reduce my effort for stuff that shouldn't be that hard in the first place. And there's all options. You can go into Pinterest and find maps and character art. You can use Notion SO or OneNote or Google Drive or whatever to maintain your notes. And then you can use frameworks to sort of funnel that all down into the things that will happen at the table. And instead of sort of perseverating over plot lines and backstory and all this stuff, which I have a really bad tendency to do. So anyway, this all helps me do that. So that's what you should be looking at. So let's talk about Rime of the Frostmaiden and my mix of it and what I'm doing to manage that. So I want to introduce you, if you haven't seen it before, to something called fronts. And I use a campaign in my campaign notes here. So there's this idea of fronts, and it was actually introduced in several game systems. The provenance of a lot of these techniques is difficult to determine, because they might have started loosely in some vein, and then people credit it to another area where it came from. I don't know. I first became aware of it in a system called Dungeon World. It might have started in the Apocalypse. I have no idea. But Dungeon World is where I became aware of this technique. And really, it's not new either. It's just business planning. It's what's called milestone planning, which means you want to take a central plot, write out your central plot lines, put in a couple of your subplots, and then over time talk about what the progression of that will be, and what would happen if the players weren't there. How do the stakes begin to sort of raise as time goes on? How does the world get affected, and what are the outcomes? And it's all but for the players, because that's really puts a focus on the players of the difference that they make in the world. Now, you're going to do this with the full intention of this being an agile process. You can kind of see on screen now, I have a progression of certain fronts that I'll get into in a second. I have what's happening now, what's looming directly in front of the now, and then what's sort of on the horizon. What do I need to tease? And you can even see, this is a bad discipline. I have in my horizon sort of question marks and geez, I don't know. And we'll get there eventually. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. But I laid down the plot lines for what I want to happen. And we'll go through this quickly. But you can see I'm modifying by now Rime of the Frostmaiden quite significantly from where it has started. The original Rime of the Frostmaiden has three main plot lines, one of which I think I'm throwing in the trash. One I know I'm throwing in the trash. Another one I may not do entirely. So this is important to talk about, because I think there's a misconception out in the community about Rime of the Frostmaiden itself and what the module is and isn't, and why it may or may not be good. There's been a ton of criticism about this module over sloppy editing, totally valid. Over maybe CRs that are off, again, totally valid. About sort of pieces not fitting together, perhaps totally valid. But the flaw in that discussion is it's starting from the assumption that it has to have all of those things, that internal consistency must happen in the module. Now, I would love to see that, but the defense in the community, the defenders that are coming out, which I think a little unfairly, are about this is not for new DMs. I wholeheartedly agree. This module is not for new DMs, and probably I would not recommend starting with Rime of the Frostmaiden. However, there's a ton of content currently available for new DMs. The Essentials Kit has Dragon of Icespire Peak. That was my last campaign. Lost Mines of Phandalin. A couple of the other modules that are already out are very Tales of the Yawning Portal. There is a plethora of content out there officially published, let alone the stuff on the DMs Guild or you can find online, that is totally appropriate, accessible, easy to run for a new DM. And I don't know that every module has to have that caveat. So I think that base level assumption is just a poor one. Now, it would be nice if every module could be run by a new DM. So even if we took that assumption, I don't agree that this is as bad as people have made it out to be. Because I think a lot of new players and new DMs just kind of run things. Players, yeah, there's some inconsistencies, but that's something the DM tends to notice more than the players. I don't think they really care all that much. So even for a new DM, I think this is totally viable, totally doable. So I think it's worth noting. Now, getting into my campaign and my campaign prep, I think that for me, the way I run campaign, this is a great module. It is a great campaign because I love to remix things. I would do it if this campaign was written perfectly in the book. Even if it was just wonderfully written, there's a high level of probability I would be remixing and redoing things. And so for me as a DM, and there are many other DMs, this is a style of DMing, and those DMs have, all of our DMs have a right to our styles. And I love that there are modules available that support the strength of different styles of DMing. So the assumption that it has to be geared towards new DMs in a certain way, I just think is wrong. So I love you and my community. I thank you for your feedback on that, but your over focus on the optimization of this, I think it does a disservice to the value that different styles of campaigns can have for different styles of DM. All right, so that's my baseline. That's my assumption that I'm coming with when I give the comments about the rest of this. So what I have in Rime of the Frostmaiden is all of these sort of episodic, granular adventures that I as a DM can look and form a through line with for my own plots and begin to sort of modify them or tease them or begin to weave them in to the story that I want to tell in the campaign that I want to run. And I think this is wonderful for it. There are, I don't know how many, there's 20, 25, something like that. If you look between chapter 2 and chapter 3, 25 individual missions, some of which I like, some of which I don't like, but you have this buffet as a DM of individual plot lines you can pull from, decide you want to use, and tie together in a through line. So that's what I'm doing. Valexon, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And if I get your name wrong, I'm very sorry about that. So Valexon, I think, is I'm still waiting for a campaign where a castle of screaming is made with flesh to stone and shape stone. Oh my God, that would be bananas, but that would be so cool, wouldn't it? A screaming castle that was made with flesh to stone or shape stone. Yeah, that would be kind of cool. That would be horror themed, so it would be appropriate for the season. It's about Halloween right now if you're seeing this later. I did my last session prep on Phantom of the Opera based one shot, which I didn't get to write up this week, but I should write up early next week and I'll post online somewhere. It'll be a basic outline. But no, that would be great. So here I am. So the module itself lays down 3 plot lines, one of which I'm absolutely not using, another which I'm heavily remixing, and the third of which I'm also kind of heavily modding. By the way, spoilers for Rime of the Frostmaiden throughout this entire stream. So if you don't want to be spoiled, and if you're one of my players, shame on you, go away. But this is going to be spoilers all over the place for Rime of the Frostmaiden. So anyway, so the original module has 3 plot lines. Oriel, the goddess, is sort of locking the area in this sort of everlasting winter and night. second plot line is the Duragar are rising for some reason, creating a dragon, this mechanical dragon, like I call it Mecha Godzilla, to attack the 10 towns and establish an above ground kingdom. And the Arcane Brotherhood is in town looking for a city buried in the ice. Actually, not using almost any of them by now. So I've modified those significantly, and I'll tell you why and how I'm doing it. So Oriel's Reign of Terror, what I wanted to add to that is when I sort of found uninteresting as a DM, again, not a criticism of the module, just what I like what I want out of a game. Her being cold and aloof, and I don't like monolithic evil. I just think that's sort of sterile as a plot element. So I want some progression. So instead, I didn't remix this very heavy, but I gave some flourishes to it. So Oriel sitting off on an island somewhere, casting spells every night to keep the area locked in night and darkness. What she wants out of this is to bring forth a set of her like chosen people, make this an area for her chosen people, which we're aiming for the Tiger Tribe or the Raghead Nomads, and that to get worship from them, gain power, and then for the region south, make them afraid enough that they'll sacrifice to her and do some things out of fear that she might bleed into their territory. So that's the core plot there. Of that, I have that's not that modified. I just added some flourishes because it's more of a reason, and I have two subplots that are happening. These are not in the book. First, the Tiger Tribe, this is inspired by something in the book. The Tiger Tribe of the Raghead Nomads, they have turned to Oriel worship. The leader of them is trying to unify all the Tiger Tribe individual groups, the clans, under her as the leader, and move forward and sort of wipe out the other Raghead Nomads. So they're in that process, so she's taking control of her folks. And then there's this subplot there of the reemergence of the Horizon Stalker. This is 100% my plot. I set up that there was early nomads that were that they protected the veil between the planes. So anything crossing over to the prime material plane, they would hunt down and kill. They were eventually the Horizon Walker Ranger subclass, basically extended out of that, and there's a whole plot line around that. So they're the spirits of these epic warriors are trying to reestablish, focusing on the players, obviously, their Horizon Stalkers to bring balance back to the world. Now, the second plot that I'm really kind of using is a Duragar. This is really modified. So I didn't like this Charlton Dragon Mecha Godzilla plot. And the reason I didn't like it is because in my exact previous campaign was Dragon of Icespire Peak. So I had this dragon in the back destroying Phandalin and sort of raining terror in the area. I don't want in my very next campaign that has one player that's bleeding over. And just for variance on my own part, I don't want another town destruction plot, and I don't want another dragon fight. I've already had one this year. I don't want to do another one. So, and I don't think there's enough plot available from the 10 towns. So I wanted to, instead of the Duragar trying to establish an above ground kingdom, the Duragar are instead heavily embroiled with their war with a dwarven kingdom to their south called the Mithril Hall. So that's a Forgotten Realms lore. I'm not going to get into that. But they, and I've already established in one of the early sessions that the Duragar are using basically flintlock pistols powered by this gem, this magical gem you can only find in Icewind Dale called Charlton. No. I got my little cat taking a visit. Say hello to everybody. Hello. Lizzie wants to be on stream. She wants to walk across my desk. So the plot here is that instead they're involved with this war with the Mithril Hall, and they need a steady supply of Charlton. They can't get that readily in the 10 towns because they're opposed, so they want to cut off supply lines coming into the 10 towns and establish a different set of allies amongst the 10 towns. Here we get to the second plot line, which is drawn again from the module, but again, there wasn't much in there. The Zentarum are trying to establish a presence in the 10 towns. I just didn't think it was plot line enough. So instead, I'm establishing a faction called the Charlton Syndicate, which is the Zentarum won a speakers council, which are sort of the leaders of these 10 towns. They're elected. They've only won one town. That is Torga, I think the name of it is. And that's sort of the ringleader for all of these other people in the 10 towns who want their business leaders, town guards, they're basically upper class folks who want to take this over and sort of be evil businessmen. So they want to take this town over and, on behalf of the Zentarum, form an allegiance with the Duragar, sell them Charlton, tons of money themselves by controlling the politics of the region and to move forward. They, of course, all of them have this short-sightedness of they think this business with Oriel will satisfy itself and then they'll move on. So that's how I've modeled it. So I've been teasing all of this Charterland Syndicate politics. I've been setting up the Duragars, cutting off other supply lines, and then and then there's this third plot in the book called the Netherese City. Actually, just for people who have read the module, I don't like that plot line. It's weird. The core plot and the core threat to this module is Oriel and her locking the region in this winter. And then the module, for some reason, throws an additional plot line of a buried city in ice at the end after that. And it seems kind of anticlimactic. I might do it as a coda, or I might do that as a follow-on adventure. But right now, so I wrote in my notes, blah, 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 Netherese City, who gives a crap? Why do the players care? I don't know. All right, so talking about plot lines and fronts, how I just take these little notes about how this is progressing, what to embroil them in. So on the Oriel plot, I've repurposed the cold-hearted killer plot line, which got a lot of criticism, but basically said that there's a Tiger tribe shaman who's posing as a caravaner going out to gain favor with Oriel by killing people who have offended her. And she's trying to seek out these magical items, these mantles that the Horizon Stalkers used back in their day. So she's trying to find the location of these old epic tribal warriors' tombs and recover these magic items to sort of power her warriors as sort of chosen warriors of Oriel for her tribe. So that's what I modified the cold-hearted killer plot line to be. The players are currently on that. Over in the Charterland Syndicate plotline, I'm trying to tease that right now they are trying to establish, the Charterland Syndicate is trying to establish their own supply lines by bringing carts through the Underdark to supply food and other supplies to the 10 towns, and at the same time cut off the legitimate Speakers Council supply lines, which is once a month during the full moon. They run one big supply caravan out of Icewind Dale to bring people out and bring supplies back in. And when I opened the campaign, my opening encounter was to stop. The players had to come through on that caravan to get into the region to begin with, and they ran across a Duragar ambush trying to shut that caravan down. So, and they found these flintlocks and the Charlotte stuff. So I opened with that plot line. So that's been very good. And the way, so in this last session they were in, they came out of, they're actually actively pursuing this Oriel mission, but this Charterland Syndicate plot is happening in the background this whole time. So they are, they got to town. They met the speaker who hired them to go into this mine to clear it out. There was the beautiful mine crest, if you're familiar with this scenario. They cleared that out, found out the captain of the guard was opposing the speaker and kind of a jerk to them the whole time, tried to dissuade them from doing this quest. When they come back out, they see the supply cart and the captain of the guard handing out food and supplies. They do some investigation, like where did this cart come from? It's very odd. They realize there's some marks on it. It must have come through the Underdark. These are crops that usually the Duragar tend to use. So that has been teased. But where they actually are, and so it's just sort of they're shrugging. They don't know what to do with that. Which is good because it's a plot for the future. Right now, Cold-Hearted Killer. I want to cap off level 3. I'm doing, just as the module suggests, I'm doing milestone progression for levels. The great thing that does for a GM is it allows you to pace the adventure itself in a way that makes things feel significant. So the milestones, in my opinion, for D&D, obviously second level is a big one, but every 2 levels after first is a big milestone. Third level is a big milestone. You get all classes by now will have gotten their subclass. Fifth level is a big milestone because you're entering tier 2. 7th level is a big milestone because you're getting access to 4th level spells, and you have a couple of other subclass abilities that kick in. And then 9th is a big one beyond that because you're getting 5th level spells and other abilities coming in. Those are quite big milestones. So they're about to hit 3rd at the end of this adventure. The arc for them has been the Cold-Hearted Killer quest, which is one of the opening quests that I've modified significantly. And as I said, I think in the original module, you're just told by someone, hey, go kill this guy's been killing people in the 10 towns, go find him and kill him. That's literally the entire plot. And he's a very powerful CR3 undead, which, there's been some comments about, you can see online. It's not worth me getting into. So what I've done instead is I've said that there's more to it. This undead is a servant provided by Auril to Torga Icefane, who's the head of the caravan, as she goes and tries to find the tombs of these warriors. The players just discover that over time, that's what her intent is. They get hired instead by the most famous bounty hunter in all the region, who's an orc, who's an elderly orc who's actually dying. He doesn't quite, he knows it, but he's not admitting it to other people. He hires the players with the reward of, they'll give them some axe beaks, he'll give them a lot of supplies. So basically, this plot line is to get them really introduced to what's going on with this Auril plot line, get them to 3rd level, and get them a bunch of supplies that they really feel like the 3rd level is a progression point. Now they can move around the region a little bit easier, and they have some more agency given the weather. So that's how I'm framing this. So to that end, where we left off last time is they had gone through the beautiful mine quest. They found a ghost had been possessing a kobold in that mine. They had questioned the ghost, found out that the ghost itself had been raised by Torga Icefane and the people they're pursuing, and that it was asked questions for the location of this old tiger tribe epic warrior that he had been studying in life. And so they found a little bit through other investigation where Torga and her caravan was heading, and they took off to Kevin's Cairn to find her. So where we are is this, this is Foundry VTT, by the way. They just had a 7.5 update. I love this lighting update, and this is where we're going. So it's dark, and I'm actually going to lighten this so you can see it. So what we have instead is, get the lighting out of the way. We have the players, and a couple of them are actually stacked on top of each other. And these are sight lines you can see in a second. One other person is in here. Here we go. We got 4 players. They are about to face off against these tribal warriors. So this is the tomb, the fabled Tomb of Holland. It has an epic magic item. What it is a mantle of tiger in this case, but each tribe has one that allows them to get advantage on rolls to track fae, celestials, or fiends. So that's that guardian of the space between worlds. And then they can, once a day, they can transform into a CR1 creature appropriate for the totem. So in the case of tiger tribe, it'll be a tiger. So Torga, who's sort of an acolyte of Auril, is there. She has to have a ceremony performed by a shaman of the tiger tribe. She's here, broken into the tomb, and going to try to do this. She's in the process of doing her ritual to get blessed, to use this to attune to this mantle. So what's happening is the players are going in, discovering these tribal warriors. They'll get to the back over here, face off against Sefik Caltro and Torga, depending on how fast they do. So I'll talk about this encounter design because I hope I can pull it off, but it's interesting. They've snuck into this tomb. There were some guards down in this area a little earlier. They took them out quietly, so they finished them off in a round, which is great. Then they've climbed this little pass here, and they've come across these 4 that they can see, but they don't know there's actually 8 of them in this little area here that are tribal warrior. They just have the tribal warrior stat block. Try to quickly move through them. These people will attack when they go in and fight, and then they need to climb, sort of get back into the rest of this cave, and they'll get into this area here where they'll face off against Sefik Caltro. And the way I have this encounter detailed is it'll take 3 rounds. Torga is in the middle of her ceremony. It'll take 3 rounds, 3 turns for her to complete her ceremony, in which case a tiger will come out. It'll be her as a polymorphed into a tiger. So that's why I have these pieces here. This is the acolyte actually doing the ceremony. This is Torga as a human, and if she turns into a tiger, this will be Torga as a tiger. I think she will, but we'll see. So another element of this is one of the design elements of Sefik Caltro is that he regenerates 5 hit points every turn that he's in an area below 0 degrees and has not taking fire damage or something like that. I'd have to look at the creature, but that's essentially what he can do. So I'm going to have him come out, face off the players in this area here. There's nothing on the map to indicate it, but I'll describe that he is sort of, there's a shaft that goes up that looks like it was recently dug out of this area up through the mountaintop because they're not very deep. That's let in really cold air, and it's cold once they get into this area again. If they observe how he moves, because right now this is all non-frozen water. It's 50 degrees or so, 40 degrees, 30 degrees, something like that in here. If they get into this area, they'll notice that the temperature suddenly drops. This character, basically, for his regeneration to work, is limited to this small area within here. So if they realize that and they push him out, they can keep him from regenerating. That might be a benefit or not. Anyway, if they can either get past him and into here and disrupt the ceremony, they will keep her from attuning to the item. If they don't, though, 3 rounds in, this tiger will come out and it'll be a fight. Now, these are 4 characters at 2nd level. I'm actually a little nervous about this because it's quite a deadly encounter to throw Sifik at them, the CR3 creature, which has 75 hit points and does okay damage. This damage is not great. This AC is not that great either, but it's enough to threaten the party. I think it's a hard encounter by the CR rules. Throwing in an additional CR1 tiger on top of that is a deadly encounter. And so we're now getting into the venture, but I want to take the risk, and I tend not to modify things very, very quickly. So in terms of my design and what I do to sort of make this worthwhile, again, this is a cap to 3rd level, so I want it to be a hard fight. I want them to really feel the hardship of this ability, so when they get to 3rd level, they feel that level progression. There's a couple items in here that'll be good. This mantle, one of the players might be able to use it, but really this actually teases the player backstory, because one of the player characters is a wolf tribe barbarian who lives in a similar tomb. They got the hermit background. They've got this secret from Rime of the Frostmaiden, which is they have a spirit that's appeared to them. I've made the spirit sort of push them along the way because they're reluctant to use their rage and all this stuff. So their arc is to become comfortable with their heritage as a wolf tribe member, and because one of the other plots is everyone thinks they're a werewolf and they're not. So they want to come to peace with their rage and their heritage as a wolf tribe member. He lived in a similar tomb. When they get here, they'll realize all these effigies sort of mounted into the wall, and that's what this fallen stone. I made this map, by the way, using Dungeons Draft. If you've ever seen it, it's a great little program. There's no sponsorship on this video, by the way. So just what I use and find effective. But it was really easy to make. So anyway, that's what this fallen rock is. It was an effigy sort of carved with a relief in the back of this chamber, that there was a secret door behind that hid this tomb here. This character, I hope, will realize that, because I'll tell them, you have exactly the same kind of chamber in the back of where you've been living. They hopefully will realize there's a secret door behind one of those as well, so they can go in and get a wolf tribe mantle to be able to turn into a dire wolf, CR1 creature again. But they would have to find a tiger tribe shaman to be able to attune to this magic item. So I don't think they're going to get very interesting, but it will be tied to another character who's a wizard. His background and interest is studying artifacts, so this will get him some play in the wizard academic community, and that will be good. So it'll give an item to a player. It'll give a backstory item to the character who's a wizard and wants all that kind of stuff. And then the last bit it will do is there's actually a magic bow in here that is detailed for my ranger player. So 3 players, 4 might be too much. I'd love to do something for the paladin, but that's going to be next adventure. So I'm tying in this climax to the backstory of 3 of my characters. And the more you can do that, the better. Again, it's a reason why I love this module. It really provides these elements. I took an encounter that was literally orcs in a field. It was just go this place, kill this person. And I've taken it to this 5-session arc where they started out with this bounty hunter hired to find people and get back to get some magic items and get to 3rd level. So that will be the whole adventure. And I've actually painted myself into a corner. And here we get into, if you have any suggestions, by the way, in chat, please feel free to make them, because I'm stuck in a couple areas of plotline. So first area of plotline that I'm sort of stuck in, you can see, why do the players care? I have this Charlton Syndicate plotline, why do the players care? That's eventually where I want them to go. I want them to do some downtime after this. somehow what will happen is one way or another they'll either have died, which I hope not, or they'll have defeated Torgay Svein and Cephalcaltro. What they will do is return to Bryn Shander, which is the city that they're from, because if you look over on the Icewind Dale map, again, it's a Virtua Foundry VTT. I have this little party icon for where they've gone. Bryn Shander is all the way back here, and that actually looks far, but it's how far is it? It's actually 16 miles from where the main city is. That's a challenge of this module. Again, sort of something worth considering. A challenge of this module is travel is difficult. These distances are extremely short, but this is a 4-day journey to get to where they are because of the difficulties of travel in the environment. They've rewritten the travel rules essentially. So anyway, this is where the party is right now. But so if assuming they win, what will happen is they need to get back, get some downtime. So they're going to go back to the bounty hunter that hired them, get the supplies that set them up to travel more easily around the region, and then decide what they want to do next. So that's what I want out of this. With the additional plot line of that person will have died by the time they get back out to Bryn Shander. That's another item that's interesting about this module for game masters. There's a lot of things that it isn't supplied to you why it's happening or what the progression is. And people are taking that, I think, incorrectly again as that nothing is happening. And that's not true. You as a DM can decide what level of meaning and what level of complexity you want to this. So one of the background elements is all of these towns are making sacrifices once a month to Orreal. They never say why in the module, and one of the 3 of the towns I think are making human sacrifices. They have to take a life, and in the module it's just set up as a lottery. Again, I thought that was a little flat, and it didn't provide enough reason. So what I modified is several months before, because this has been going on 2 years, there would be a terrible blizzard at the height of Orreal's power every month. So at the new moon every month, this massive blizzard would blow in. A bunch of people would die in these towns from exposure, cold, or whatever, from the storm itself. And the town found through shaman and other advisors that if they made a sacrifice, if every town made a sacrifice appropriate to Orreal for its size, each month they would avoid the blizzard. So there's a stake set in there to make it important to do this. 3 of the towns, the big ones, have to make a human sacrifice, which is horrific, right? And in most cases, these towns are run by lawful good speakers, which makes a conundrum. A lottery to do this is terrible. In my world, people would sort of try to find some way out of it or find some acceptable ethical way to do it, although there really is no ethical way to do it. And that's what's interesting about it. What does it say about the town depending on how they choose to pursue this? So in Bryn Shander, what they've been doing is I've been using that old myth. I don't know if it's a myth or sort of stereotype or whatever, but in the northern regions, older people would go out onto the ice and sort of drift out onto the ice and let themselves pass so they wouldn't be a burden to their tribe. So in Bryn Shander, yes, they have a lottery, but every month some older member of the community has come forward and said, I'm just going to go out there and I'll be the one this month. So that tells a story of dedication of the community, of sacrifice of the people. I love that. I love it. But it's also sort of horrific to think about. So they carve these totem poles to the people in the middle of town, to the people who willingly sacrifice them, as sort of a tribute to them and honor the families who do it. So that's what their setup is. Over in East Haven, they basically take a criminal every month and have been sending them out in the wild. And so that's a form of execution that they might have done anyway. And with the back plot that all of these things are beginning to run out, like the ready supply of people to either acceptably kill or volunteer to die is getting smaller and smaller as the months go by. And then the last one is Targos. That's right, the city of Targos. That is and that's a straight up lottery, but it's controlled by the Zentarum, the Chartland Syndicate. So that's straight up corruption. There's ostensibly, I can never say that word right. There's supposedly a lottery in town, but everybody knows it's rigged. People are paying for sort of have their lots taken out, or you have to put in 10 lots and you can pay to reduce the number of lots. So it's all rigged, and people are grumbling about it. But that's the stakes in those towns. So what I want to do is this orc bounty hunter who hired the players way back in session 1, his plot line is he wants to just hold on long enough to get to the middle of this month and be the one he wants his death to mean something. So he's gone through the most famous bounty hunter. He's old, he's enfeebled, and he just wants his life to go and be the last one. So I had this lone wolf and cub plot line where when the players met him, he was laying in bed, basically almost an invalid. There was this young tiefling girl with him that was a family member of one of the murder victims, and he was trying to find this person, and he just got too old to do it, which is why he hired the party to do it. He was like, you got to finish this for me. Although he hasn't told him he's dying, I really foreshadowed that quite enough. So by the time the players get back to Bryn Shander, actually, if I can, I'll pull up the calendar. Lots of tools to be used in this game. So if we go over here, campaign calendar, they're right here. I should line these out. They're actually right on the 14th. They've arrived at the location for Torga Icefang. She's fighting out with him. So way back 16 miles away, the 15th is the night of the full moon. The orc bounty hunter is going to come forward and say, that's my time, and he goes out. So by the time the players get back, I'm guessing around the 17th or so, all they're going to find is this tiefling girl that they bonded with in that first adventure, sitting there looking up at the pole, and they can begin to realize that the effigy of this guy that hired them is being carved into the pole, and they can let that sort of play out for their mind of what might have happened. So I think that's a great flourish, a great touch. It's bittersweet. I love as a DM because that sets the stakes, and it constantly is driving home this idea of this attrition of the region. The Oriel, no matter what else is going on, there's this background element of eroding the stability, the lives, the happiness of the people in the region that I want to constantly drive home. And again, that drives back to this plot line in this front, because there's always this drumbeat of why do the players care about what's going on in the campaign. So, and I actually don't know in some cases. So the looming things that I want to have happen is eventually their arc is to stop the Tiger Tribe, which you're about to do here. And they need to discover the supply lines of the Chartland Syndicate, and if something deeper is going on. They've actually done both of that, and will have completed both of these now timelines at the end. That leads into the next thing. So the next progression of Oriel is they're going to go out and really start getting into this mindset of, we need to try to figure out what's going. I want them to get into. I can't say what they're going to do, but hopefully the players will get into this mindset of we want to figure out what's going on with Oriel to see if there's some way to reverse it. So the stakes are going to become that the sacrifices are no longer sustainable. We might get a month or two of blizzard returns. We might get a few other things like that, and this actually calls out a great challenge D&D DMs have that are unique to our game. I think unique. It depends on the game. Obviously, mileage vary. And that's timelines. Timelines for these progressions are incredibly short. I don't know if you ever kept a calendar of your campaign, but at least for me, these campaigns take place over weeks, sometimes a few months. And it's so you get even with this, I'm anticipating this entire adventure because I'm going to go to about 7th or probably 9th level. This entire adventure is going to play out over the period of about 3 months in world time. That's not a lot. That's crazy to go from 1 to 9. And so GMs are sort of straight faced with this. How do you meaningfully progress a plot in these sort of compacted timelines? And I think D&D specifically lends to that because it's a resource management RPG, and people, I just can't. I have never had a party, and I've never seen a party. I've been gaming for 40 years that just say, yeah, we'll come back next month and do something. We'll take a month of downtime. Like I try to push downtime at every different party I've ever had, and they're always like, no, I want to get to this. Oh, I have to take 3 days to make a healing potion. No way, I don't want to take that time, when there's nothing pushing them to do it. So I'm a little careful about trying to give them some downtime, but I have problems with players doing that. So I don't know what your experience is in these games, but if you have experiences of encouraging downtime, I would love to hear it. Please put it on the tavern wall down below in the comments, or put it in chat here. I've just never gotten players to bite. They always want to get out and get that next magic item or that next piece of treasure or take care of the next NPC. And that's maybe a function of the game itself, because I set these high stakes. Why would you sit around and take a leisurely vacation if Oriel is constantly killing people with her winter, right? So anyway, that therein lies my problem. So I want the progression to go that sacrifices are no longer sustainable. My challenge there, and I don't know what to do, is to make that obvious. I have to progress to the new moon of the next month. And we've already had players go from level 1 to level 3 in the period from the full moon where they entered the campaign to the first new moon. So I don't know how I'm supposed to go a whole month when I've already gone 3 levels and a half a month. I'll figure something out about that. What I'll probably do is turn up the pressure of the Tiger Tribe and all that kind of other stuff. But I don't quite know how I'm going to do it yet. And then for Charterland Syndicate, this is actually, maybe that'll even take a back seat to what's going on with the Charterland Syndicate, because what I want to happen there is they're trying to take over the 10 towns. So at some point, there's this great quest later on in East Haven around a hag that has a cauldron of plenty or something like that. Basically, it supplies food. It would be, in my opinion, the most desirable magic item in all of this region because it magically produces food on demand every night. So it would be huge to have where supplies are a problem, people are starving. So there's this plot in the game where one town tries to steal it, but instead I'm going to modify that to if the players recover it, and it's a big assumption, but they go through this adventure, assume they recover this cauldron, and if they don't, I'll have some other rival group recover it. Bring it back, and there's a whole hoopla amongst the 10 towns of who controls it and how the food gets distributed. And what they'll do is the Speakers Council are trying to vote on how they're going to distribute it and work those pieces out. And as part of that, the Charterland Syndicate is going to make a full frontal effort to sort of undermine them, cause riots and sort of unrest within the towns. And at some point, they're going to try to assassinate the Speakers Council. So that's my what I envision as the level 5. Like once they finish that plan, that's the level 3 to level 5 block. So level 1 to level 3 has been Oriel, Tiger Tribe, undoing the killers that have been going on there, and sort of the shenanigans, and then discovering the 3 to 5 plot. And 3 to 5 plot is going to be all the shenanigans of the Duragar and the Charterland Syndicate, opposing them on their assassination, and they get to level 4. And that'll be through level 4, and they hit level 5 with that. So they, at that point, they go into greater area plot lines. So that brings us back again to sort of campaign design and choices that I'm making. And I would be interested in hearing your campaign choices. So the way the module is designed, again, it's fair to say some of it's sloppy. When you get into the progression of the module is you go the 10 Towns Adventures, which are a series of 10 adventures you optionally could go on. You finish 5 and you get the 4th level, I think is what it's really set up to do. And then there are these area-wide, Icewind Dale regional-wide adventures that are basically the same thing. There's a bunch, I think, again, 10 individualized adventures that you can find out through the greater region. There's tribal areas, there's giants, there's all kinds of stuff, Wailing Caverns, and all this stuff that you can do. And that gives you from, in the module, level 4 to level 7. Now, the weirdest part of the design, well, one of the weirdest parts of the module design to me is a later chapter, which is their original plot around this Charterland Dragon. You go back to level 4. It's designed like level 3. Chapter 3 is designed from levels 4 to 7, and then you get to chapter 4 and 5 or something like that, and they are actually, I've got it right in front of me. Well, right, yeah. So Icewind Dale. So 10 Towns, chapter 1. This is designed level 1 to 4. Chapter 2 is designed for level 4 to 7. But then chapter 3 is designed for level 4 again. It just, I don't like it. That's why I'm like, I don't want to deal with any of that. So if I have to redesign it, I'm just going to do something different. So 3 and 4 go again to level 7. And then when you get to chapter 5, you're at level 7. Then you sort of face off against Oriel, do some stuff in 5 and 6. And then, then 6 and 7 are around this lost city, which I don't understand why it's there really. So I just don't see the need to do this destruction light. Chapter 4, I don't see the need to. If I can get them from 4 to 7 on chapter 2 material, I'm going to do that. Why would I do anything different? And the cap off again, so that the cap off to this level 2 with these Icewind Dale regional adventures is going to be uncovering the machinations of the Duragars themselves. So basically take out their agents. So the culmination of that will be undo this 10 towns and this Duragar plot to take things out. At which point they've handled the local 10 towns elements. They've unraveled, hopefully, the sort of the conspiracy to take over the greater area and stabilize each one of these people in different regions. And they can see where the towns and the region is poised to go if Orreal is lifted. So now they have an investment in all of the things they've set up across the region in undoing Orreal. When they get to level 7, they can go there, defeat Orreal, and then free the 10 towns to basically become what they would become given what the players have set up in the region and see that outcome. That's probably where I'm going to end the adventure. So we're probably going to end level 8 or level 9 there. So anyway, back to this campaign itself. So that's what this will be. And then beyond that, I'm sort of struggling with this Charlatan Syndicate plot of why do the players care? Like what's in it for them? So I have an injection, and then the same thing in Orreal, like the Great Dying, like when I get to this third on the horizon thing, if they've done nothing. So by the time they get to Orreal, it's going to be very obvious. People are going to be starving these towns. It's going to be a desperate scenario. Again, the timeline thing I just talked about, that's a challenge for me as a DM. I don't actually have a great scenario, a great solution for this. And that's one of the things that brings me about to my stream and what I want. Why am I streaming in the first place? First of all, I have to do this session prep. Talking through this helps me think through it. But the other thing is I think there's a lack of streaming content and YouTube video content that talks about the nitty gritty of how games are run. That I think what's lacking in the conversation, if everybody, the way the conversation tends to go online, whether that's Twitter or videos, is someone says, hey, there's this situation, what do I do? And then someone just replies, well, just do this. And magically everything works out. And that's not true. That's just not games and gaming. It ignores the complexity of how do you actually work within a group? How do games and plots and techniques survive contact with the players? I think that and I think I get why people don't talk about that, because you have to do a lot of what I'm doing here right now, which is, well, it could be this and it could be that, and in this context you have to do these other things, and that's games. And if you're not talking about that, I would say that you aren't really talking about games. You're talking about sort of, nobody cares what you can do in a perfect world. They care about what you can do in the actual world when it comes to a game. And a game to be played needs to deal with the complexities of the game itself. So back to this. Why do the players care about both the Charlatan Syndicate and how do I express the Orreal? Even the Orreal thing, why don't they just go, I don't care, I'm leaving. Good luck, so long, suckers, and leave. I'm sort of, a lot of the module, even as written, depends a lot, and this is an increasing point of view in a lot of the material presented by Wizards of the Coast. It really is assuming that the players want to be heroes. Now, I actually like that. I prefer games like that. As a root assumption, I don't think it's a good one for GMs, because players might be playing anti-heroes. They might like the player themselves might want to be a hero, but they might be playing a character who's an anti-hero. They might be more interested in a maybe a dark character who's forced into the role of a hero. They might actually just want to play a dark character. I don't know. Those are things that should come out in session 0, and game masters should decide what they're comfortable with in their game, what kind of point of view they want to have, and sort of where the party wants to go. But I do think just the assumption that the players have to be a hero and have to be a hero in this way is a bridge too far for game masters. That's not giving players enough agency. It's so anyway, what do I do to make this, like, how do I keep them invested with these on the horizon? Like, when stuff gets bad, how do I keep players invested in staying here and not going and asking for some city in the south to send an army, which always ends up happening in these cases, in my cases. So I don't know is really the answer. What I want to do is, what I'm trying to set, so how I'm trying to set this up, and this is my specific case, and mileage is going to vary for you, so I don't know that you should use these plot threads, but I'm going to talk about the techniques that I'm building towards, so you can consider that if you're running Rime of the Frostmaiden or any campaign. What I'm trying to do here is invest the players with personal stories that give them a reward individually for for this outcome that they will be super invested in going after Oriel and untying the Charlatan Syndicate. So this is why it's hard to talk about in streams. And I have 7 minutes. I'm gonna wrap this up. I promise. This is a weird stream for me because I usually write my session prep, and I want to actually peek at that once. If this is your first stream, and I'll get back into what I'm just saying. I use what's called Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master, their technique for preparing my sessions, and not just dividing things into sections. I have my players, what their goals are, and who they are, where we were. I have themes, and this is my ad. So a few of these are my ad. I have a theme section, so I can always go back to, am I sticking to the themes I wanted to portray? I have some plot thread sections and some notes. I have a strong start. That's right out of the Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master. Start with a bang. Every session with a bang. Invest the players so you don't spend a half hour talking. Write out potential scenes on where you want to go. Write out some secrets that can come out in that adventure, and important NPCs that help you run it, what fantastic locations, think through, and then I keep my revealed secrets below. So we're not going to get I usually write through this more, but we're not going to get a chance to go through this. I do think the point I'm trying to make is important about how to, again, loop back to how do you tie players to these long-term plot threads. So I think the best way to do it is to develop their personal plot lines if they have them, or their player interests. Sometimes character plot lines are very important, and you can feed in goals that will get them to their individual character plot lines. Sometimes you have a player who just wants to show up, roll some bones, and go with combat, and that's fine. So you can still find, however, that there's a player goal, like a player. If they don't really get into role playing and they don't have serious plots, often they have something else, like they really like a tough combat, or they really want to be a hero. So lean on that. Like Oriel is the biggest fight. You'll be a legendary warrior if you come across that. Or lean on, it'll be a great adventure, or any of those things for them. So for plots, though, I'm blessed this campaign with players who really have a long and sustainable plot. And so what I have are 4 players. That one is a wizard who wants to become an academic superstar by discovering something unique and becoming a top member of the conclave, I think the name it is, in Silvermoon. Another is a player that is a paladin with a waning noble house, who wants to reestablish her household as a dominant structure of where she's going. The third is a barbarian who ignores his heritage as a wolf tribe member and that doesn't really want to. The character doesn't know where he wants to go, but he wants to rise and sort of get his identity as a hero of the region. And then the fourth one is a ranger who brags all the time about accomplishments he actually hasn't done. He's a bit of a faker, but he wants to actually get experience and become a hero of the region. That's great fodder. So where do I want to go with this? So for the wizard, defeating Oriel will bring in all kinds of magical lore, magical items that they can study and bring back as a big harvest to the museum back home. For the paladin PC who wants to reestablish her house, the Charlatan Syndicate is really where they're at. Because if she can defeat the Duergar plot, if she can reestablish the 10 towns, she doesn't know this yet, but her household will be reestablished in the nobility of the northern towns and granted the title of Guardian of the Passages to Icewind Dale. So what will happen is Mithril Hall, I'll set up something, that's actually a good idea. I need to take a note for this. So Charlatan Syndicate, I want for her, paladin plot, I want for her establish Guardian of the Southern Passage by Mithril Hall. I'm not spelling anything right. I hate to type in front of you. I know that's not very fun to watch me type. So what she's going to do is, if she unravels this plot line, her house might be reestablished as a noble house that actually is charged with maintaining order and guardianship of these passageways that they can perhaps at the end of it take away when they push the Duergar back out of those passageways and Mithril Hall reestablishes them. Maybe they'll be like, I don't know, I'll have some plot line where, we don't want one person to control this, so maybe they'll between the Harpers, the Lords Alliances, and the towns in the north, they'll say we need a neutral third party control these. The dwarves will agree to it, and that'll be the player character's household, and that's how she'll reestablish a big playership in that area. The wizard's already taken care of, like I said. The store, the barbarian, his plot line would be an Oriel if he and I think the ranger's going to do this too. I think the reestablishment of Horizon Stalkers. In other words, a new faction will arise in the region whose entire dedication is to protecting the prime material plane from intrusions from creatures from other planes. So Fae, fiends, and celestials. So my hope is they will reestablish this, and this will be the ultimate payoff. So they will do both things. They will reestablish and sort of the ranger will be the representative of this faction to the Lord's Alliances in the 10 town. The barbarian character will be the representative of this to the barbarian tribes and other orcs and other tribal people of the area. And it'll be the sort of the humanoid race, not humanoid race, but the intelligent races of the region will band together for this purpose. And that will be the ultimate. I don't know how to express that on the horizon, but I'm rolling the dice big time here because I'm gambling as a DM that the players will buy that. And so here's my advice to you. I just worked through how I took the goals from each player character and tied them to the ultimate outcome. You don't need to know what those are, but you need to establish sort of the progression towards that. I'm going to choke point this to get them more. Right now, none of that is clear to them. They're getting teases of it. They know about the Charlton Syndicate. They know about Oriel and that there might be something they can do. But they're just at level 3. They wouldn't really do that yet. I want them to get a firmer picture of that. So one more method that I think is really good for DMs to consider. Tasha's Cauldron of Everything is introducing the idea of patrons, which I love. I think the patron idea is a really great way to keep games centralized, get them information and supplies they need, and keep them moving forward. So I'm moving this party to a patron who's going to be this Luxodon artificer, alchemist, who's sitting up in a tower, again, very old, had been a companion of the paladin characters' grandparents back in the day when they adventured, and sort of sitting up there, and he'll come by and he'll sort of feed them a little bit more focused information. And if they need nudges to get to these horizon elements, because again, it's fuzzy, I don't quite know yet what their buy-in is going to be. He can do things like offer them additional lore, offer them alliances and communication outside of the region. Basically, it's a lever I can turn as a DM to make them more likely to move ahead and accept those plot lines. We're talking 3 or 4 months of real lifetime before I really get to that concern. I just need enough right now to tease where I'm going. So that's the plot. So what we have next session is the party is going to complete this adventure around Kevin's Cairn. They have Holin's Tomb interior, so they're going to defeat these tribal warriors trying to use this magic item from the Horizon Stalkers, defeat Sefik Kaltro and Torga Icefang, I hope, and acquire several magic items that really fuel them. They're going to click over to 3rd level. They're going to travel back to Bryn Shander, find out that their patron, the person who hired them, has sacrificed himself for this month's human sacrifice for Bryn Shander. Get a bunch of supplies so they can travel around a little bit better, and set them up next session to go up. That's what this mark is here. That's where their Luxodon patron, who's been told them exist, and they now are curious to go talk to this person. That will be how I start off the levels 3 to level 5 set of adventures to set up the rest. So that's going to be kicking off next session. I believe what we'll do is we'll work through the combat within this tomb interior. We'll get them their magic items. They'll go back to Bryn Shander, get their supplies, do a bunch of role playing around the characters and the effects of what happened there. And I just love this update to Foundry Foundry VTT. It's going back to night mode here, because you can see this lighting is just fantastic. And then they'll get back and they'll be ready to kick off after that to go acquire their patron and uncover this plot line of the Charlton Syndicate and the Durgar and the attempt to take over Icewind Dale and what the next steps might be to Oriel. So I really love this seed of this plot line. This is one of the better adventures that I'm running that are happening right now. So I'm looking forward to it. Okay, that's where we are. So we're at our hour. I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope you enjoyed it. This was a different stream that I had normally. There was a lot of sort of theory crafting behind how do you set up adventures and how do I tie things to plot lines. And I hope you enjoyed that kind of content. I would love for you to, if you have an opinion of what you would like to hear in these streams, especially future streams. This is my 4th stream, I think, and I'm going to be doing these every week, and I'll refine my technique and what I'm talking about over time. But if you have an opinion of what you would like to hear, if I didn't talk about something enough, if you wanted to hear more about certain techniques, if you wanted to hear something different that I didn't cover, I would love for you to leave that in the comments down below on the tavern wall down there, wherever you're finding this media. I stream both to Twitch and YouTube simultaneously, so you can follow me on either platform. I'm under optional rule in either location. You can find me on Twitter also as optional rule. I'm pretty active there. I have some great conversations going, and I'm very thankful to people who've engaged me on social media in all kinds. Now, I would really appreciate if you enjoyed this show, if you would give it a like or thumbs up, if you would follow me on Twitch, if you would subscribe to me on YouTube, do all the social media things that help promote the show, share it on your own social media once it's posted. These get posted to those channels once I wrap up this live stream here, and I would really appreciate it. It would really, really help me out. Again, if you have any questions, you can join me in future weeks and ask them during the live stream. I would love to answer them. Or just tweet them to me. Say, question, I have a question for you in the next live stream. I'd love to hear what you think about X, Y, or Z. And I'd be happy to do that. So please do all those things. It really means a lot to me, the people who've come into the stream. So thank you, all the viewers who've come, the comments I'm getting on Twitter and on YouTube, and the viewers I get from Twitch. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. So please go ahead and do all this follow stuff. So I'm going to leave it off here. I hope you've enjoyed the stream. Please give me your advice and comments. So until next week when I'm doing this again, I hope you have a great week. I would love to hear about your games. And remember, fun is not optional. Thank you very, very much, everybody.